Earlier this week, 3 Russian journalists were murdered while investigating a private Russian security company in the Central African Republic, a country in Africa, for those who aren't familiar. Kirill Rodchenko, Alexander Rastorguyev, and Orkan Zamal were all laid to rest in Moscow earlier this week. They were going to spend 2 weeks in the Central African Republic. They were investigating a Russian security company named the Wagner Group, which has interests in diamond and gold and uranium mines and CAR, and it's also considered Putin's private army. The leader of Wagner is currently under U.S. sanctions for aiding Russia-backed rebels in Ukraine. Not surprising, given everything we know about the intertwined nature of Russian oligarchs. And in February, the Wagner Group was also involved in a 4-hour attack against American commandos stationed inside of Syria. Now, if you know anything about Putin, and we know some things about Putin, you know that investigating anything that's nicknamed Putin's army is probably going to be a little bit dangerous for you, and it was for these 3 journalists because they were ambushed. Their driver somehow survived. That's part of the question around exactly what went down. The driver said they were ambushed by 10 men who spoke Arabic and were wearing turbans, as the story goes. And again, the driver got away completely unharmed, which is question number 1 about what exactly went on here. And as you research the story, you find out that the organization funding these journalists was the Investigations Management Center, which is bankrolled by an anti-Putin Russian oligarch. Or in other words, the paychecks for these journalists came from someone who is anti-Putin in Russia. The journalists were on their way to meet with someone who had promised to provide access to officials who could speak on the record about Russian involvement in the Central African Republic. And of course, they never made it to that meeting. And these deaths immediately become suspicious. They become appended to this very long and growing list of suspicious deaths among Russian dissidents and opposition journalists. And of course, the Putin defenders are saying, listen, guys, Central African Republic is dangerous. For all we know, the driver sold them out. Since after all, the driver did survive. There's nothing to see here at all, except that we have, of course, example after example after example of Wagner-related, quote, accidents that happened to Russians. There's one example from April. A Russian journalist who was investigating Wagner in Syria fell out of his 5th floor apartment. Not the most common accident that people have at home, not exactly stubbing your toe with that coffee table. And then, of course, we could do an hour just on suspicious dissident and journalist deaths related to Russia. But on Wednesday, the U.S. issued sanctions against Russia for that chemical weapon use to kill former Russian agent Sergei Skripal on British soil, which we covered extensively. So I've said it before. I've said it many times. To figure out a story, you sometimes have to look at the micro and you sometimes have to look at the macro. Oftentimes what conspiracy theorists do to trick people into believing their conspiracy or to distort stories is they will focus on the wrong one. On a story where you should be focusing on the micro, they will focus on the macro, or vice versa. We can never be 100% sure that these 3 journalists died for their anti-Putin work, or because they were maybe suspected of already having something on Vladimir Putin. That's another possibility. But it fits into the broader pattern of these deaths, right? You have a bunch of cases where people who are hostile to the Putin regime, they're investigating the Putin government, they're doing this type of work, they die in unusual circumstances, poisonings, vehicle ambushes in foreign countries, falling out of high windows, accidentally stabbing themselves 10 times in the back. Okay, maybe that last one I made up, but it's sort of the prototype of these situations. So yeah, the Central African Republic is dangerous for anyone who is not from there, and even for people who are from there. Anyone could fall out of a window. All of that stuff is possible, but here it's the pattern that's difficult to justify as a coincidence. And as far as the CAR is a dangerous and remote place, it has nothing to do with Putin. Well, listen, if they're willing to poison someone on British soil, why wouldn't they be willing to do something even more noticeable like a car ambush in the Central African Republic? And this is the authoritarianism that Trump is impressed with time and again. When it's Duterte from the Philippines, when it's Putin, when it's Erdogan, when it's Xi Jinping, whoever, Trump is impressed with these types of authoritarian tendencies. These are the guys Trump really likes. And it is yet another, not one, but 3 Russian journalists doing work hostile to Putin, maybe already had stuff on Putin, who end up in an unfortunate wrong place, wrong time situation. I guess that's what it's being called, if you believe that. If you believe that. Send me your thoughts. This is something already being discussed on the David Pakman Show subreddit at davidpakman.com/REDDIT. We will take a break. We have a great interview coming up next, more stories, the bonus show, a lot going on today, and I'm glad you're with us. Today's program was made possible in part by Blinkist.com/Pakman. I love Blinkist. It's the really perfect app for anybody who likes politics and learning. And if you're watching or listening to the David Pakman Show, I'm sure you love politics and learning. And what Blinkist does is take the best and most popular nonfiction books, they condense them into 15-minute audiobooks that you can listen to in one sitting, and you can learn about politics, philosophy, psychology, economics. Often, we don't have the time to actually read as many books as we would like. I know that I'm at my limit for how much I can read, and this way, you can absorb the most important, valuable information from books in just 15 minutes, maybe on your way to work, maybe on your way to the gym, maybe cooking vegan recipes at home, whatever is your thing. And our audience can get a 7-day free trial by going to Blinkist.com/Pakman. If you're watching on YouTube, I've put a link in the video description. And after the free trial, if you like it, and I think you will, you can continue enjoying thousands of condensed audiobooks for just about $5 a month. You can go to blinkist.com/PAKMAN to sign up.